Baby found a German shepherd with broken legs, dragging himself. What he did next. Left everyone in tears. What happened next will shock you to your core. The story you're about to listen to reveals how one little boy's unexplainable connection with animals changed everything for a brutally injured German shepherd. This incredible tale of bravery, hope, and healing will leave you breathless. If this touches your heart, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. The autumn breeze rustled through the trees of Maple Ridge Park as the Taylor family made their way along the winding trail. Mark and Sarah Taylor smiled as they watched their 5-year-old son Noah skip ahead, his eyes wide with wonder at every leaf, rock, and squirrel that crossed his path. But there was something different about Noah, something his parents had noticed since he was just a toddler. "He always seems to know," Sarah whispered to her husband as they watched Noah crouch down to examine a small bird with an injured wing. "It's like he can feel what they're feeling." Mark nodded, watching as their son gently cupped his hands around the tiny creature. "The vet said she's never seen anything like it. Remember when he found that cat hiding under our porch 3 days before the tornado hit?" Noah had always possessed an uncanny ability to sense animals in distress. It wasn't something his parents could explain. It was just Noah. His kindergarten teacher had called them in for a conference last month, after Noah had insisted on checking a small storage shed behind the playground, leading them to discover a litter of abandoned puppies that would have otherwise gone unnoticed. "He's just got a gift," Mark said, watching as Noah released the bird after whispering something to it. The bird hopped twice, then flew away. Noah turned back to his parents, a wide smile revealing his missing front tooth. "He's okay now," he called out. "Just needed a rest." They continued their hike, the canopy of red and gold leaves creating a kaleidoscope of colors above them. Sarah had packed a picnic lunch, Noah's favorite peanut butter and banana sandwiches cut into star shapes, and they planned to eat at the lookout point that offered views of the entire valley. Noah was about 20 paces ahead when he suddenly froze. His small body tensed, his head tilted slightly as though listening to something only he could hear. "Noah," Sarah called, "stay where we can see you, buddy." But Noah didn't respond. Instead, he turned sharply to the left, away from the marked trail, his gaze fixed on something in the distance. "Noah," Mark's voice was sharper now, "we need to stay on the path." The boy didn't look back. He took one step off the trail, then another, moving with unusual determination. "Something's hurt," he said, his voice barely audible. "Something's really hurt." Before his parents could reach him, Noah broke into a run, darting between trees and jumping over fallen branches with surprising agility for a 5-year-old. Mark and Sarah exchanged a quick, worried glance before following, calling his name. "Noah, stop right now!" Mark shouted, but his son had already disappeared into a thicket of young pines. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she pushed through the branches, ignoring the scratches on her arms. "Noah!" When they finally caught up, the scene before them made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. Noah was kneeling beside a fallen log, his small hand outstretched toward what appeared to be a large German shepherd. But this was no ordinary dog. The animal's hind legs were twisted at unnatural angles, and dried blood matted its once beautiful coat. The dog was using its front legs to drag itself forward, leaving a trail of disturbed earth behind it. The animal bared its teeth when Mark and Sarah approached, a deep growl rumbling from its chest. Its eyes, though filled with pain, flashed with fear and distrust, but not toward Noah. "I can hear you," Noah whispered, his voice steady and calm as he inched closer to the injured animal. "I'll help you." Sarah reached out instinctively to pull her son back, terrified the frightened animal might lash out. "Noah, be careful. It's hurt and scared." "He's scared of grown-ups," Noah said without looking back. "Bad people did this to him." There was a certainty in his voice that sent a chill down Sarah's spine. The German shepherd's eyes locked with Noah's, and something passed between them, a silent understanding that transcended words. The growling stopped, and the dog's massive head lowered slightly, as though in surrender. "How did you know he was here?" Mark asked, keeping his distance but watching in amazement as his son gently placed a hand on the dog's head. The animal flinched but allowed the touch. "He was calling me," Noah said simply, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. "His name is Warrior." Sarah knelt down, still keeping a safe distance. "Noah, honey, how do you know his name?" Noah looked up at his mother, his eyes filled with tears. "He told me." Mark pulled out his phone, already dialing animal control, but Noah's head snapped up, his eyes suddenly wide with panic. "No, they'll take him away," he cried. "We have to help him ourselves, right now." Mark lowered the phone, exchanging a confused look with Sarah. "Buddy, this dog needs medical attention. His legs are broken. We can't help him ourselves." "Then we take him to Dr. Mia," Noah insisted, referring to their family veterinarian. "But we can't call the dog people. Warrior says they won't understand." Sarah was about to explain why that wasn't possible when she felt the first drop of rain on her cheek. Looking up, she noticed that the sky had darkened considerably in the last few minutes. What had started as a perfect autumn day was quickly transforming into a brewing storm. "Mark," she said, nodding toward the sky, "we need to make a decision quickly." Thunder rolled in the distance, and the German Shepherd whimpered, trying unsuccessfully to push himself further under the log. Noah was already taking off his red jacket, his hands working with surprising dexterity as he gently draped it over the dog's trembling body. "It's okay, Warrior," he whispered. "The loud noises can't hurt you." The dog's eyes never left Noah's face, something like hope flickering in their depths. Mark ran a hand through his hair, weighing their options. "If we leave him, he might not survive the night, especially with this storm coming, but moving him could make his injuries worse." "We're not leaving him," Noah said with unexpected firmness. His little jaw was set in determination, tears streaming down his cheeks. He didn't give up, and we can't give up on him. Something in his son's words struck a chord in Mark. He looked at the battered animal, then at his wife. Sarah nodded almost imperceptibly. "Let's try to get him to the car," she said softly. Mark quickly assessed the situation. "We'll need to make some kind of stretcher. I don't think he can walk, and he's too heavy to carry." Sarah immediately slipped off her jacket. "We can use this in your jacket too. Do you still have those collapsible hiking poles in your backpack?" Mark nodded, already understanding her plan. Within minutes, they had fashioned a makeshift stretcher, using their jackets stretched between the hiking poles. The real challenge would be getting the injured dog onto it. "He's going to be scared," Sarah warned, looking at the animal's massive teeth, "and in pain." Noah knelt beside the German Shepherd, his small hands gently stroking the dog's head. "We're going to move you now," he explained in a soft voice. "It might hurt a little bit, but we're taking you somewhere safe where your legs can get better." To Mark and Sarah's amazement, the dog seemed to understand. His eyes remained fixed on Noah, and though his body trembled, he didn't growl or snap when Mark cautiously approached with the stretcher. "Nice and slow," Mark murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "Noah, keep talking to him." Noah continued his gentle stream of reassurances as his parents worked together to slide the stretcher under the injured animal. The dog whimpered in pain but remained surprisingly cooperative. "That's it, Warrior," Noah encouraged. "You're so brave." Once the dog was secured on the stretcher, Mark and Sarah each took an end. The rain was falling steadily now, and the path back to their car seemed much longer than it had been on their way in. "It's about a mile back to the parking lot," Mark said, adjusting his grip on the poles. "Noah, you walk right beside us, okay? Talk to him the whole way." Noah nodded solemnly, positioning himself next to the dog's head as they began the difficult journey back. The German Shepherd weighed at least 70 pounds, and the stretcher swayed between Mark and Sarah as they navigated the increasingly slippery trail. "He was a hero," Noah said as they walked, his hand never leaving the dog's fur. "That's why his name is Warrior. He protected people before the bad men took him." Sarah shot a questioning look at Mark over their son's head. How could Noah possibly know something like that? The rain grew heavier, drumming against the canopy of leaves above them. Warrior whimpered with each jolt of the stretcher, but his eyes remained fixed on Noah, as though the boy were his lifeline in a world of pain. They were about halfway back to the parking lot when Mark had to stop to readjust his grip. As he set his end of the stretcher down, the sudden movement caused Warrior to yelp in pain. The dog's lips pulled back, revealing sharp teeth, and for a heart-stopping moment, Mark thought he was going to lunge. "Dad!" Noah cried out, quickly placing himself between his father and the frightened animal. "You scared him. He thought you were going to hurt him again." Again. The word hung in the air between them. Noah knelt beside Warrior, whispering something that neither Mark nor Sarah could hear. The dog's tense muscles gradually relaxed, his threatening posture subsiding. "I told him you're not like the bad people," Noah explained, looking up at his father with complete seriousness. "I told him you're going to help fix his legs." Mark swallowed hard, feeling a strange mixture of wonder and disbelief. "Right," he said finally. "Let's keep going." The rest of the journey was painfully slow. By the time they reached the parking lot, all three of them were soaked to the skin, and Warrior was shivering violently, despite Noah's jacket still covering him. As Mark fumbled with the keys to their SUV, Noah suddenly became very still. "Dad," he whispered, his voice tight with fear. "Someone hurt Warrior on purpose. Bad people are looking for him." Sarah paused in the act of opening the back hatch. "Noah, honey, how could you possibly know that?" But Noah's attention was focused entirely on the dog. "We need to hurry," he insisted. "They're coming." A chill that had nothing to do with the rain ran down Sarah's spine. Her son had always had strange intuitions about animals, but this was different. This felt ominous. Mark quickly arranged a blanket in the back of their SUV, and together they carefully transferred Warrior from the stretcher. Noah immediately climbed in beside the dog, murmuring reassurances. "We need to get him to Dr. Mia right away," Sarah said, closing the hatch and hurrying to the passenger seat. "I'll call ahead to let her know we're coming." As they pulled out of the parking lot, Mark glanced in the rearview mirror. Noah was cradling Warrior's head in his lap, his small fingers gently combing through the dog's wet fur. The German Shepherd's eyes were closed, but his breathing seemed steadier. "It's going to be okay," Noah was whispering. "I promise." Sarah finished her call and turned to Mark. "Dr. Mia says to bring him right in. She'll be waiting for us." The 20-minute drive to the veterinary clinic felt like hours. The storm had intensified, rain lashing against the windshield and thunder cracking overhead. Each time lightning flashed, Warrior would whimper, and Noah would soothe him with gentle words. "He's used to be a police dog," Noah announced suddenly from the back seat. "He helped catch bad guys." Mark and Sarah exchanged another worried glance. "Noah," Mark began carefully, "how do you know these things?" Noah shrugged, his eyes never leaving Warrior's face. "He shows me pictures in my head, like movies." Before either parent could respond to that puzzling statement, they arrived at Sunshine Animal Clinic. Dr. Mia Chen was already waiting at the door, her face grim as she watched them pull into a parking space near the entrance. "I'll get a gurney," she called, disappearing back inside. Mark opened the hatch, rain immediately soaking him again. "Noah, you need to move back now and let Dr. Mia help Warrior." Noah nodded reluctantly, whispering something in the dog's ear before carefully extracting himself. Dr. Chen returned with an assistant and a rolling stretcher, and together with Mark, they transferred the injured German Shepherd. "My God," Dr. Chen muttered, as she got her first close look at the dog's condition. "What happened to him?" "We found him in the woods," Sarah explained, ushering Noah inside. "He seems to have at least 2 broken legs, and there are other injuries we can't see." Dr. Chen nodded grimly. "Let's get him inside and assessed immediately." The clinic was warm and brightly lit, a stark contrast to the dark storm outside. As they wheeled Warrior through the waiting room, thankfully empty this late in the day, Noah refused to leave the dog's side. "I need to stay with him," he insisted when Dr. Chen tried to guide him toward the waiting area. "He'll be scared without me." Dr. Chen looked like she was about to refuse, but something in Noah's expression made her hesitate. She glanced at the dog, who despite his injuries was watching Noah with an intensity that seemed almost human. "He can come to the exam room," she decided, "but he'll need to stand back when we start treatment." The examination was thorough and heartbreaking. Dr. Chen's face grew increasingly troubled as she cataloged Warrior's injuries. Both rear legs had multiple fractures. There were infected wounds around his neck and ankles, consistent with being chained or tied up, and his body showed signs of severe malnutrition. "This wasn't an accident," she said finally, her voice tight with controlled anger. "This dog has been systematically abused." Noah, who had been sitting quietly in the corner as promised, spoke up. "The bad men made him fight other dogs. When he wouldn't fight anymore, they broke his legs and left him in the woods to die." 3 pairs of adult eyes turned to stare at the 5-year-old. "Noah," Sarah said carefully, "how could you possibly know that?" Noah met his mother's gaze steadily. "Warrior told me." Dr. Chen cleared her throat. "Actually, he could be right about the fighting part. I've seen similar injuries in dogs rescued from fighting rings." She turned back to the animal on her examination table. "He'll need extensive surgery, and even then, I can't guarantee he'll ever walk normally again." Mark stepped closer, lowering his voice. "What about the cost? We want to help him, but—" "Warrior says he's a special dog," Noah interrupted, his voice suddenly louder. "He used to help people before the bad man took him." Dr. Chen paused, then reached for a small handheld device. "Let me check something." She ran the device over Warrior's shoulder, moving it slowly across his fur. After a moment, it emitted a soft beep. "He's microchipped," she announced, quickly connecting the scanner to her computer. "Let's see if we can identify him." The adults gathered around the screen, waiting as the database search ran. Noah remained by Warrior's side, his small hand resting gently on the dog's paw. When the results appeared, Dr. Chen gasped. "Oh my God!" "What is it?" Mark asked, leaning closer. Dr. Chen turned to them, her expression stunned. "His name isn't Warrior, it's Ranger. He's a police canine who disappeared during a raid on a suspected dog fighting ring 6 months ago. He was presumed dead." The room fell silent except for the steady beep of the monitor connected to Ranger's vital signs. "I told you he was a hero," Noah said softly, and no one contradicted him. The moment was broken by the sudden ring of the clinic's phone. The veterinary assistant answered it, spoke briefly, then covered the receiver with her hand. "Dr. Chen," she called, her voice strangely tight. "Someone's asking if we've seen a German Shepherd brought in recently. They didn't give a name." Before anyone could respond, Noah suddenly stiffened. His eyes grew wide with fear as he pressed himself against Ranger's side. "The bad man knows Ranger is here," he whispered, his voice trembling. "He's coming." Dr. Chen exchanged a look with the assistant, then nodded toward the phone. "Tell them we haven't seen any German Shepherds today, then call the police immediately." Dr. Chen worked quickly, her hands moving with practiced precision as she assessed Ranger's injuries more thoroughly. The examination room was silent except for the steady beep of monitors and the occasional whimper from the German Shepherd. "Multiple fractures in both hind legs," she murmured, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Signs of prolonged malnutrition. These wounds around his neck and ankles are infected. They're from restraints. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing." Sarah stood close to Noah, her arm wrapped protectively around his small shoulders. Will he make it?" Dr. Chen's expression was grim. "He'll need emergency surgery, and even then..." She trailed off, her eyes meeting Sarah's over Noah's head. The unspoken message was clear. The cost would be astronomical, and the outcome uncertain. "We have to help him," Noah insisted, his voice small but determined. "We can't let him die." Mark stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Dr. Chen, we want to do everything we can, but I need to know what we're looking at in terms of cost." Before the veterinarian could answer, the clinic's back door burst open. A tall woman in a police uniform strode in, her hand resting instinctively on her holster. "I got a call about a missing canine." Dr. Chen straightened. "Officer Garcia." "Yes, we just identified him through his microchip. This is Ranger." Officer Lucia Garcia's stern expression softened as she approached the examination table. "My God," she whispered, gently touching the dog's head. "We thought he was dead." Noah looked up at the police officer, his eyes wide. "Are you Ranger's friend?" Officer Garcia knelt down to Noah's level. "I am. Ranger and I work together sometimes. He's a very special dog." She glanced back at the injured animal. "What happened to him?" While Dr. Chen explained the situation, Mark pulled Sarah aside. "Do you think the police department will cover his medical costs now that they know who he is?" Sarah nodded hopefully. "They must have resources for injured canines, right? I mean, he was lost in the line of duty." Their whispered conversation was interrupted when Noah tugged insistently on his mother's sleeve. "Mom," he said urgently, "Ranger needs me to stay with him, even for the tests." Sarah exchanged a glance with Dr. Chen, who shook her head slightly. "Noah, honey, you can't go with Ranger for his x-rays and other tests, but we'll be right outside waiting." Noah's face crumpled. "But he'll be scared without me. He doesn't trust anyone else." As if to confirm this, Ranger let out a low whine, his eyes fixed on Noah. Dr. Chen hesitated, then sighed. "Let me see what I can do, maybe for some of the less invasive tests." Officer Garcia had stepped away to make a phone call, and now she returned, her expression serious. "Dr. Chen, I've spoken with my sergeant. The department wants a full report on Ranger's condition and..." She glanced at Noah, then lowered her voice. "There's more to this situation than you know. Ranger wasn't just any police dog. He was working on a major case when he disappeared." The adults moved to a corner of the room, speaking in hushed tones while Noah remained by Ranger's side, whispering reassurances. "What's going on?" Mark asked, keeping an eye on his son. Officer Garcia's voice was barely audible. Ranger was part of a joint operation targeting Vincent Blackwood, one of the biggest names in illegal dogfighting in the state. We were closing in on his operation when Ranger vanished during a raid. We always suspected Blackwood was behind it, but we couldn't prove anything. Sarah gasped. You think this Blackwood person is the one who called asking about a German Shepherd? Officer Garcia nodded grimly. It's very possible. If Blackwood realizes Ranger is alive and has been found, he might see him as a loose end that needs tying up. A chill ran down Sarah's spine as she glanced at her son. Noah said the bad man was coming. How could he possibly know that? No one had an answer. The conversation was interrupted by a technician who needed to take Ranger for x-rays. Despite Noah's protests, they finally convinced him to wait outside with his parents while Ranger underwent the necessary tests. In the small consultation room, Noah sat with his knees pulled up to his chest, his expression worried. He's scared, he whispered. He doesn't understand what's happening. Mark put an arm around his son. The doctors need to figure out exactly what's wrong so they can help him, buddy. They're going to fix his legs. Noah shook his head. It's not just his legs. Ranger is afraid the bad man will find him again. He looked up at his father with tear-filled eyes. Dad, he showed me something really important. He used to help people before the bad man took him. Sarah knelt in front of her son. What do you mean, Noah? How does Ranger show you things? Noah frowned, struggling to explain. It's like pictures in my head, but also feelings, like when you have a dream, but you're awake. He looked down at his hands. Ranger says he's a special dog. He can find things that are hidden. That's why the bad man wanted him. Mark and Sarah exchanged worried glances. Their son had always had an unusual connection with animals, but this was beyond anything they'd experienced before. Before they could question him further, Dr. Chen entered the room, followed by Officer Garcia. The veterinarian's expression was grim as she sat down across from them. I've reviewed Ranger's x-rays and blood work, she began. Both hind legs have multiple fractures, some older, some newer. There's evidence of previous injuries that healed improperly. His malnutrition is severe, and the infections from his restraint wounds have spread. She took a deep breath. He needs immediate surgery, but I have to be honest. His chances aren't good. Noah's head snapped up. No, he's going to be okay. He has to be. Officer Garcia stepped forward. Dr. Chen, the department is willing to cover all medical costs for Ranger. He's one of our own, and we take care of our own. Relief washed over Mark's face. That's incredible. Thank you. Dr. Chen nodded. That's good news, but I want you all to understand the reality of the situation. Even with surgery, Ranger may never walk normally again, and his recovery will be long and painful. He can do it, Noah said with absolute certainty. He's the bravest dog ever. Sarah smoothed her son's hair. Of course he is, honey. Officer Garcia cleared her throat. There's something else we need to discuss. If Blackwood is indeed looking for Ranger, you could all be in danger by association. We don't know how he found out Ranger was here, but he has connections everywhere. Mark instinctively pulled Noah closer. What are you suggesting? We need to move Ranger to a secure location once he's stable enough after surgery. And, she hesitated, it might be best if your family stays somewhere else tonight, just as a precaution. The reality of the situation began to sink in. What had started as a simple hike had somehow entangled them in something dangerous and much bigger than themselves. We can go to my sister's house, Sarah suggested. She's out of town this week, but we have her key. Officer Garcia nodded. That would be good. Don't tell anyone where you're going, not even friends or other family members, just until we get a better handle on the situation. Noah tugged at Officer Garcia's sleeve. But what about Ranger? I can't leave him alone. He needs me. The police officer knelt down to Noah's level. Ranger is very lucky to have you looking out for him. But right now, the best thing you can do to help him is to keep yourself safe. I promise we'll have officers watching over him every minute. Noah didn't look convinced, but before he could argue further, a technician appeared at the door. Dr. Chen, we're ready for Ranger's surgery. Noah jumped to his feet. Can I see him first, please, just to say good luck? Dr. Chen hesitated, then nodded. Very briefly. He's been sedated in preparation for surgery. They followed the technician back to a pre-op area where Ranger lay on a table, various tubes and monitors attached to his body. Despite the sedation, his eyes fluttered open when Noah approached. You're going to be okay, Noah whispered, gently touching the dog's muzzle. The doctors are going to fix your legs, and then you'll come live with us, I promise. Ranger's tail thumped weakly against the table once, twice. Then his eyes drifted closed again as the anesthesia took hold. Dr. Chen touched Noah's shoulder. "We need to get started now. The surgery will take several hours." Reluctantly, Noah allowed himself to be led away. As they walked through the clinic toward the exit, Mark noticed that the waiting room, which had been empty earlier, now held a single occupant, a thin man in a dark jacket who was scrolling through his phone. The man glanced up as they passed, his gaze lingering on Noah. Mark felt a prickle of unease. "Come on," he murmured, ushering his family toward the door where Officer Garcia was waiting. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving behind a clear night sky and the scent of rain-washed earth. Officer Garcia walked them to their car. "I've arranged for a patrol car to follow you at a distance," she said quietly, "just as a precaution. I'll call you as soon as Ranger is out of surgery." Sarah clutched Mark's arm. "You really think we're in danger, don't you?" Officer Garcia's expression was grave. "I think we can't be too careful. Vincent Blackwood is not someone who leaves loose ends." As they drove away from the clinic, Noah pressed his face against the window, watching until the building disappeared from view. "I should have stayed with him," he whispered. Mark adjusted the rearview mirror to check if the promised patrol car was behind them. "Ranger is in good hands, buddy. Dr. Chen is the best, and he has police officers watching over him." But Noah shook his head. "The bad man is there. I could feel him watching us." Sarah twisted in her seat to look at her son. "What do you mean, Noah? Did you see someone?" "Not see. Feel." Noah wrapped his arms around himself. The same bad feeling that was hurting Ranger. The prickle of unease that Mark had felt in the clinic lobby returned tenfold. He pressed down harder on the accelerator, checking his mirrors every few seconds. Sarah's sister's house was in a quiet suburb about 20 minutes from the clinic. They drove in tense silence, Noah unusually subdued in the back seat. Mark spotted the patrol car discreetly following a few cars behind them and felt marginally better. The house was dark when they arrived, but the security lights came on as they pulled into the driveway. Sarah quickly unlocked the front door and ushered Noah inside while Mark brought in the emergency overnight bags they kept in the trunk for unexpected situations. "I'll check the house," Mark said, setting down the bags. "Sarah, get Noah settled." Noah tugged at his father's sleeve. "Dad, is Ranger going to be okay by himself?" Mark knelt down. "He's not by himself, buddy. Dr. Chen and the police officers are with him. And you know what? I bet he's being super brave right now, just like you." Noah didn't look convinced, but he nodded reluctantly. After making sure all doors and windows were locked, they tried to establish some semblance of normalcy. Sarah found some canned soup in her sister's pantry and heated it up while Mark set up the guest room for Noah. But Noah refused to go to bed. "I need to stay awake until Ranger's surgery is done," he insisted, setting his small jaw stubbornly. "He needs me to send him brave thoughts." Too exhausted to argue, his parents allowed him to camp out on the living room sofa, wrapped in blankets. As the hours ticked by, Noah's eyelids grew heavier despite his determination to stay awake. It was past midnight when Officer Garcia finally called. Mark took the phone into the kitchen to avoid waking Noah, who had finally fallen asleep. "He made it through surgery," Officer Garcia said, her voice reflecting her own exhaustion. "Dr. Chen says it was touch and go for a while, but he's stable now. They had to put pins in both hind legs." Mark exhaled in relief. "That's good news. Has there been any trouble?" There was a brief hesitation on the other end of the line. "Nothing concrete, but one of my officers noticed a suspicious vehicle circling the clinic several times. When they approached, it drove away." Mark leaned against the kitchen counter, tension returning to his shoulders. "What happens now?" "We'll keep Ranger under guard at the clinic until morning. Then we're going to move him to a secure location for his recovery, a safe house we sometimes use for witnesses." "A safe house? Is that really necessary?" Officer Garcia's voice was grim. "I've been doing some digging since we identified Ranger. The case he was working on before he disappeared, it wasn't just about dogfighting. We had intelligence suggesting Blackwood was involved in drug trafficking using the same networks. Ranger was specifically trained to detect certain substances, and he was getting too close. That's why he was targeted." Mark rubbed his eyes, trying to process this information. "And you think this Blackwood person might come after him again? After a dog? Not just any dog, a key witness who could identify his operation." Officer Garcia paused. "And now your family is connected to Ranger. I don't want to frighten you, but I need you to understand why we're taking these precautions." After they hung up, Mark returned to the living room to find Sarah sitting beside Noah's sleeping form, gently stroking his hair. "He made it through surgery," Mark whispered, sitting down beside her. "Garcia says he's stable." Relief washed over Sarah's face. "Thank God." Mark hesitated, then shared the rest of what Officer Garcia had told him. Sarah's eyes widened as she realized the full implications. "What have we gotten ourselves into?" she whispered. Before Mark could answer, Noah stirred. His eyes flew open, strangely alert for a child waking from sleep. "Ranger's okay," he said. It wasn't a question. Mark nodded slowly. "Yes, buddy. His surgery went well." Noah sat up, clutching the blanket around him. "But he's scared. The bad men are there." Sarah and Mark exchanged worried glances. "Noah, honey, what do you mean?" Sarah asked. Noah's eyes were wide and unfocused, as though he was seeing something beyond the room. "They cut the power. Everything's dark. Ranger can't see, but he can smell them." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. "Noah, you were just dreaming." The shrill ring of his cell phone cut him off. It was Officer Garcia again. "We have a situation at the clinic," she said without preamble, her voice tight. "Someone cut the power, including the backup generator. We're evacuating Ranger now." Mark's blood ran cold as he looked at his son. "We'll be ready," he said automatically, though he had no idea what he was agreeing to. After hanging up, he turned to Sarah. "We need to pack up, now." Sarah was already on her feet. "What's happening?" "Someone's at the clinic. They're moving Ranger." Mark couldn't bring himself to say more in front of Noah, but Sarah understood the unspoken message. The threat was real. Noah scrambled off the couch. "I told you! Ranger knew they were coming." As Sarah quickly gathered their things, Mark knelt in front of his son. "Noah, I need you to tell me exactly what you're feeling from Ranger right now." Noah closed his eyes, his small face scrunched in concentration. "He's moving. In a car. He hurts a lot, but he's trying to be brave. There are people with him. Good people, not the bad ones." His eyes flew open suddenly. "But the bad ones are following them." Mark didn't know what to make of his son's claims, but he couldn't ignore the coincidence, or whatever it was, between Noah's words and Officer Garcia's call. They were almost ready to leave when headlights swept across the living room window. Mark cautiously peered through the curtains to see a police cruiser pulling into the driveway. Officer Garcia emerged, followed by an older officer with salt and pepper hair. Mark opened the door before they could knock. "Officer Rivera," Garcia introduced her colleague. "He's in charge of the safe house where we're taking Ranger." Officer Rivera nodded grimly. "We need to move quickly. There's been a development." Inside, they explained the situation. The clinic had been deliberately targeted, the power cut, the generator disabled. Officers on guard had spotted at least 2 intruders attempting to enter through a back entrance. "Ranger has been successfully evacuated, but we have reason to believe they're tracking our movements," Officer Rivera said. "We need to split up. Officer Garcia will escort you to the safe house while I create a diversion with a decoy transport." Sarah clutched Noah's hand tightly. "Is this really happening? Over a dog?" Officer Rivera's expression was grave. "Not just any dog. Ranger was the key to bringing down one of the biggest drug operations in the state. And now, somehow, your son has formed a connection with him that we don't fully understand, but which might be equally valuable." Noah looked up at the officer with solemn eyes. "Ranger tells me things, important things that can help catch the bad men." The officers exchanged glances. "That's exactly why we need to keep both of you safe," Officer Garcia said. "Are you ready to go?" As they prepared to leave, Mark pulled Officer Rivera aside. "Is there something you're not telling us? How serious is this threat?" Officer Rivera's voice dropped to a whisper. "Vincent Blackwood doesn't make empty threats or half measures. If he wants Ranger back, or silenced permanently, he'll use every resource at his disposal." He glanced at Noah. "And now your son is involved too. The sooner we get you all to the safe house, the better." They slipped out through the back door, cutting through the neighbor's yard to reach Officer Garcia's unmarked car parked a block away. Noah clutched his favorite stuffed animal, a worn plush dog that looked vaguely like Ranger, as they hurried through the dark. "Will Ranger be at the safe house already?" he whispered to Officer Garcia as she helped buckle him into the back seat. She nodded. "Yes, he should be there ahead of us, but he'll be heavily sedated from his surgery, so he might not be awake when we arrive." Noah settled back, his expression determined. "That's okay. I can still talk to him even when he's sleeping." As they drove through the empty pre-dawn streets, Sarah reached for Mark's hand. What had started as a simple hike in the woods had somehow plunged them into something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. And at the center of it all was their 5-year-old son, with a connection to an injured dog that defied explanation. "Almost there," Officer Garcia said as they turned onto a remote road on the outskirts of town. "The safe house is just ahead." Noah pressed his face against the window. "Ranger's waiting for us," he whispered. "He knows we're coming." Did Ranger know they were coming, or was it something more? What is the true nature of the connection between Noah and the injured canine? Share your thoughts on this amazing bond between a child and a heroic animal in the comments below. The safe house was a modest cabin tucked away in a wooded area, invisible from the main road. Officer Garcia parked behind the structure, keeping the car hidden from view. A tall chain-link fence surrounded the property, and security cameras monitored every approach. "Stay close," she instructed as they made their way to the back entrance. "The property is secure, but we're still being cautious." As they approached the door, it opened to reveal Officer Rivera, who should have been creating a diversion with the decoy transport. His expression was grim. "I thought you were taking the decoy route," Officer Garcia said, immediately on alert. "Change of plans. We received intelligence that Blackwood's men were waiting along the decoy route. Someone leaked information." He ushered them inside quickly, locking and bolting the door behind them. "We had to scramble to get Ranger here safely." The interior of the cabin was surprisingly modern, with reinforced windows and state-of-the-art security systems. In what would normally be the living room, Ranger lay on a makeshift hospital bed, surrounded by medical equipment. A woman in scrubs, not Dr. Chen, was checking his IV. "This is Melissa," Officer Rivera introduced the woman. "She's a veterinary technician who works with the canine unit. She'll be monitoring Ranger's condition." Noah broke away from his mother's grasp and rushed to Ranger's side. The German Shepherd was heavily sedated, but his tail thumped weakly against the bed when Noah approached. "I told you we'd come," Noah whispered, gently touching the dog's head. Sarah followed her son, taking in Ranger's condition. Both hind legs were heavily bandaged and stabilized with external metal supports. Various tubes and monitors were attached to his body. "How is he?" she asked Melissa. The technician's expression was cautiously optimistic. "The surgery went well. Dr. Chen was able to repair the fractures, but he has a long recovery ahead. The next 48 hours are critical." Mark joined Officer Rivera near the window, where the officer was scanning the tree line with night vision binoculars. "How serious is this situation, really?" Mark asked quietly. "I need to know what my family is involved in." Officer Rivera lowered the binoculars. "Vincent Blackwood isn't just a dog fighter. His operation is a front for drug trafficking across 3 states. Ranger was part of a joint task force operation that was closing in on his distribution network when the dog disappeared during a raid. Without Ranger's evidence, the case against Blackwood stalled." "Evidence? From a dog?" Mark couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice. "Not just any dog. Ranger has special training beyond standard canine work. He can detect specific chemical compounds used in manufacturing certain drugs, compounds that aren't part of regular canine training protocols. He was able to identify Blackwood's product even when it was disguised or hidden among legitimate goods." Officer Rivera glanced toward Noah, who was still whispering to the sedated dog. "And now, somehow, your son seems to have formed a connection with him that none of us understand." Mark followed his gaze. Noah has always had a way with animals, but this is different. The things he knows, the things he says, Ranger tells him. "It could be crucial," Officer Rivera said. "If Ranger has information about Blackwood's operation, and Noah can somehow access it, it might be enough to restart the case." Across the room, Noah had climbed onto a chair next to Ranger's bed. The exhausted 5-year-old was fighting to keep his eyes open, one small hand resting on the dog's fur. "You should all try to get some rest," Officer Garcia suggested. "There are 2 bedrooms down the hall. We'll take shifts keeping watch." Sarah coaxed Noah away from Ranger's side and toward one of the bedrooms. The boy went reluctantly, insisting on leaving the door open so he could see into the main room where Ranger lay. Mark and Sarah settled into the 2nd bedroom, though neither expected to sleep. Through the open door, they could see Officer Garcia seated by the window, her handgun within easy reach. "How did this happen?" Sarah whispered. "One minute we're on a family hike, and the next we're in a safe house hiding from drug dealers." Mark pulled her close. "We'll get through this. Once Ranger is stable enough to move, they'll probably transfer him to a more secure facility and we can go home. But Sarah wasn't convinced. What about Noah? You've seen how he is with Ranger. And what if these people come after us anyway? What if they think Noah knows something? Before Mark could answer, they heard a small sound from the doorway. Noah stood there, his stuffed dog clutched tightly to his chest. "I can't sleep," he said in a small voice. "Ranger keeps showing me pictures." Sarah patted the bed beside her. "Come here, sweetie. What kind of pictures?" Noah climbed between his parents. A big stone house with lots of dogs locked up, and bags of white powder hidden inside dog food bags. His eyes were wide in the dim light. "Ranger says that's where the bad men kept him, where they keep the other dogs too." Mark and Sarah exchanged alarmed glances over their son's head. This was exactly the kind of information Officer Rivera had said would be valuable. Details about Blackwood's operation that only someone who had been there would know. "Noah," Mark said carefully, "are you sure these are pictures Ranger is showing you? Not just dreams?" Noah nodded emphatically. "It's not like dreaming. It's like watching TV inside my head, but I can feel what Ranger feels too." His lower lip trembled. "He's scared for the other dogs. They're still there, and the bad men hurt them." Sarah pulled Noah close. "Try to sleep now, honey. We'll tell Officer Rivera about the pictures in the morning." But Noah shook his head. "We need to help them now. Ranger says there's a little boy there too." Mark sat up straighter. "A boy? Are you sure?" Noah nodded, his expression deadly serious. "The bad men took him because his dad tried to stop them from hurting the dogs. Ranger tried to save him before, but that's when they broke his legs." Sarah looked at Mark, alarm clear in her eyes. "Mark, if there's a child in danger..." Mark was already on his feet, heading to the door to call Officer Rivera. But before he could reach it, the power in the cabin cut out, plunging them into darkness. Noah gasped. "They're here! The bad men found us!" In the main room, they heard Officer Garcia's urgent voice. "Everyone stay where you are. We have protocols for this." Flashlight beams cut through the darkness as the officers moved efficiently around the cabin. Mark pulled Sarah and Noah close, instinctively positioning himself between them and the door. "Backup generator should be kicking in," Officer Rivera called out. But seconds ticked by, and the lights remained off. "Just like at the clinic," Sarah whispered. Noah wriggled free from his mother's grasp. "Ranger needs me." Before either parent could stop him, he darted out of the bedroom and into the main room. Mark followed immediately, his heart pounding. In the main room, illuminated only by flashlights, Melissa was working quickly to disconnect Ranger from the equipment that required electricity and switch to battery-powered monitors. The German Shepherd was becoming agitated, his sedation wearing off enough for him to sense the tension. Noah reached the dog's side and placed a hand on his head. "It's okay," he whispered. "I won't let them take you again." Officer Garcia was at the window, peering out into the darkness. "Movement in the trees," she reported quietly. "At least 3 figures approaching from the north." Officer Rivera joined her, radio in hand. "Backup is on the way, but they're at least 15 minutes out." He turned to Mark. "Get your family into the safe room, now." "What about Ranger?" Noah demanded, refusing to leave the dog's side. Officer Rivera hesitated, then nodded to Melissa. "We'll move him too. The safe room has emergency power." Melissa looked uncertain. Moving him could compromise his recovery. The surgical sites... "We don't have a choice," Officer Rivera cut her off. "If Blackwood's men get in here, Ranger's recovery will be the least of our concerns." Working quickly, they transferred Ranger's bedding onto a wheeled cart. The dog whimpered in pain despite their careful movements, and Noah stayed right beside him, murmuring reassurances. Officer Rivera led them down a short hallway to what appeared to be a closet. He pressed his hand against a concealed panel, and the back wall slid open to reveal a small, windowless room. "In here," he directed. "It's reinforced steel and concrete. Even if they breach the cabin, they won't get through this." Mark ushered Sarah inside, followed by Melissa pushing Ranger's cart. Noah refused to be separated from the dog, clinging to the side of the cart. "What about you and Officer Garcia?" Sarah asked. Officer Rivera's expression was grim. "We'll hold them off until backup arrives." The hidden door slid closed behind them, sealing with a soft hiss. The safe room was small but efficiently designed, with emergency supplies, a communication system, and, as promised, its own power source. Dim lights came on automatically. Melissa immediately went to work reconnecting Ranger to the necessary monitors and checking his condition. The movement hasn't torn any stitches, but he's in pain. I'll give him something to help." Noah sat cross-legged beside Ranger's bed, one hand gently stroking the dog's fur. "The bad men want to hurt him because he knows their secrets," he said solemnly. "But I know their secrets now, too." Mark and Sarah exchanged concerned glances. "Noah," Mark began carefully, "what exactly has Ranger shown you about these men?" Noah's eyes were unnaturally focused for a 5-year-old. "They have a big house with a stone fence. The fence has eagles on top." He began to describe details that seemed impossible for him to know: specific layouts, security systems, hidden rooms beneath the main house. "There's a room with lots of computers and phones, and another room where they keep dogs in cages. The drugs are hidden in the dog food, in bags stacked behind a fake wall." Mark looked at Sarah, then at Melissa, who had paused in her work to listen. "Is there any way to get this information to the officers?" Melissa nodded toward a communication panel. "That connects to their radios, but—" She didn't need to finish her thought. They could all hear the muffled sounds of gunfire coming from outside the safe room. The situation had escalated beyond their worst fears. Noah suddenly grew very still, his eyes wide. "Something's wrong," he whispered. "Ranger's trying to tell me something important." The adults fell silent, watching as the boy closed his eyes in concentration. Ranger, despite his sedation, had become agitated, his breathing more rapid. "There's another way into this place," Noah said suddenly. "A secret tunnel from the shed outside. The bad men know about it." Mark lunged for the communication panel, but before he could activate it, they heard a new sound, metal scraping against metal, coming from a corner of the safe room. Melissa gasped. "That's impossible. This room is supposed to be impenetrable." But as they watched in horror, a small section of the floor began to move, revealing what appeared to be a maintenance hatch they hadn't noticed. And from below, they could hear voices. The security plans were outdated, Mark realized. They don't know this access exists. Noah pressed himself against Ranger's side. "Ranger knew," he whispered. "He was trying to warn us." Mark looked around desperately for a weapon, finding nothing more than a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. He grabbed it, positioning himself between the opening hatch and his family. Sarah pulled Noah close, backing up against the far wall. Melissa stood protectively in front of Ranger, though what she could do against armed intruders was unclear. The hatch lifted, and a beam of light shone through. Mark raised the fire extinguisher, ready to strike. But instead of Blackwood's men, Officer Garcia's face appeared in the opening. "It's clear!" she called up. "This is a way out. We need to move now." Relief flooded through Mark. What happened? Backup arrived faster than expected. Blackwood's men are retreating, but we don't know how many more might be out there. This maintenance tunnel leads to a storm shelter about 100 yards away. We can evacuate from there. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Lowering Ranger's cart through the narrow hatch was impossible, so they carefully transferred him onto a blanket that could be used as a stretcher. The dog whimpered in pain despite their gentle handling, and Noah refused to leave his side. Officer Garcia led the way through the narrow tunnel, flashlight illuminating their path. Mark and Officer Rivera carried Ranger between them, with Noah walking alongside, one hand always touching the dog. Sarah and Melissa followed, carrying as much of the medical equipment as they could manage. The tunnel was cramped and damp, clearly designed for maintenance access rather than escape. They moved as quickly as they dared, conscious of Ranger's fragile condition and the possibility of pursuers. "Almost there," Officer Garcia called back, her voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "The storm shelter connects to a service road where we have vehicles waiting." Noah tugged at Mark's sleeve. "Dad," he whispered urgently, "Ranger says the boy is in the stone house, the one with the eagles. We need to help him." Mark glanced down at his son, then at Ranger. The dog's eyes were open now, watching Noah with an intensity that seemed almost human. "We'll tell Officer Rivera as soon as we're safe," Mark promised. "If there's a child in danger, they'll do everything they can to help." They emerged from the tunnel into a concrete storm shelter, its heavy door already open to reveal a starlit sky. Several police vehicles waited on a dirt road just beyond, lights off to avoid detection. As they carefully loaded Ranger into one of the vans, Officer Rivera approached Mark. "Your son's connection with Ranger. It's unlike anything I've seen before, and the information he's providing matches details that only someone inside Blackwood's operation would know." Mark nodded grimly. "Noah says there's a child being held at Blackwood's property, a boy whose father tried to interfere with the dog fighting. Officer Rivera's expression hardened. If that's true, it changes everything. We've been building a case against Blackwood for drug trafficking and animal cruelty, but kidnapping a child? That would give us grounds for an immediate raid. But you'd need more than the word of a 5-year-old who says a dog told him, Mark pointed out. Officer Rivera glanced toward Noah, who was sitting beside Ranger in the van, whispering to the dog. Under normal circumstances, yes. But your son has already provided detailed information about Blackwood's compound that matches our intelligence. Information he couldn't possibly know any other way. As dawn broke over the horizon, their unusual convoy made its way toward the city. Instead of returning to the police station, they were directed to a private veterinary facility with security measures already in place. Ranger was quickly settled into a recovery room, with Melissa and another vet technician attending to him. Noah, exhausted but refusing to leave the dog's side, had finally fallen asleep in a chair next to Ranger's bed. In an adjoining room, Mark and Sarah sat with Officer Rivera and several other officers, including the task force leader, Captain Reyes. Noah's detailed description of Blackwood's compound had been transcribed, and satellite images of the property were spread across the table. The layout matches, Captain Reyes confirmed, comparing Noah's description to their intelligence photos. But we've never had confirmation about this underground area he describes, and we certainly had no intelligence about a child being held there. Officer Rivera leaned forward. I've worked with enough witnesses to know when someone is telling the truth, and while the source is unconventional, I believe this information is genuine. Captain Reyes studied the satellite images. Even if we believe it, we need more to get a warrant for a raid. Judge Wilson has already rejected 2 of our previous attempts to get inside Blackwood's compound. The door opened, and a bleary-eyed Noah appeared, rubbing his eyes. Ranger's drawing you a map, he announced. He needs paper and colors. The officers exchanged skeptical glances, but Mark was already on his feet. I'll get him what he needs. Within minutes, Noah was seated at the table, surrounded by colored pencils and blank paper. His small hand moved with surprising confidence as he began to draw. First an overhead view of the property, then detailed floor plans of the main house and underground facilities. The boy is here, he said, marking an X in what appeared to be a small room in the basement level. His name is Tommy. He's 7, and he's been there for 11 days. Captain Reyes leaned closer, his skepticism giving way to interest. Can you show me where the security systems are? Noah nodded, switching to a red pencil to mark camera positions, guard stations, and alarm triggers. His drawings were crude in execution. He was, after all, only 5, but the level of detail was astonishing. How is this possible? Captain Reyes murmured to Officer Rivera. Officer Rivera shook his head. I can't explain it, but I've learned not to question gifts when they might help us save lives. As Noah continued to draw, adding more details with each passing minute, the officers began to formulate a plan. If the information was accurate, they now had enough to convince Judge Wilson to grant a search warrant. A junior officer burst into the room. Captain, a missing child report just came in. 7-year-old Thomas Whitaker disappeared 11 days ago while walking his dog near the Blackwood estate. The father reported receiving threats after he filed complaints about hearing dogs fighting on the property. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Noah, who looked up from his drawing with solemn eyes. Tommy misses his dog, he said simply. The bad men took him too. Captain Reyes stood up, decision made. Get me Judge Wilson on the phone, now, and assemble the tactical team. We move as soon as we have the warrant. Sarah moved to Noah's side, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. Honey, how did you know about Tommy? Noah looked up at his mother, his expression far older than his years. Ranger showed me. He tried to save Tommy before, but that's when the bad men hurt him. In the recovery room next door, Ranger lifted his head slightly, as though hearing his name. Despite his injuries and the pain medication, his eyes were alert, focused on the door separating him from Noah. Mark knelt beside his son. Noah, this is very important. Is there anything else Ranger wants to tell the officers before they go to the house with the eagle fence? Noah closed his eyes for a moment, as though listening to something only he could hear. When he opened them again, he picked up his pencil and drew a final mark on his map, a small X in what appeared to be a section of wall in the basement. This is a secret door, he explained. It goes to where they keep the special drugs, the ones that made Ranger sick when he smelled them. Captain Reyes carefully took the drawing. Thank you, Noah. This could save lives today. As the officers filed out to prepare for the raid, Sarah pulled Mark aside. What happens after this? If Noah's information leads them to Blackwood, will our family be in danger? Mark watched as their son returned to Ranger's side, resuming his position as the dog's self-appointed guardian. I don't know, but I don't think we can walk away from this now, even if we wanted to. Through the window of the recovery room, they could see Noah speaking softly to Ranger, his small hand resting on the dog's head. The German Shepherd's eyes never left the boy's face, and his tail thumped weakly against the bed. Whatever bond had formed between them transcended normal understanding, but one thing was clear. It had set in motion events that would change all their lives forever. Could you have ever imagined such an extraordinary connection between a child and an animal? Have you ever experienced a moment when animals seem to communicate with you beyond normal understanding? Think about it. Is there more to animal intelligence than we've been willing to acknowledge? Dawn broke over the city as the tactical team assembled in a warehouse near the police headquarters. Captain Reyes stood before a table where Noah's drawings had been professionally enlarged and annotated with additional intelligence information. Judge Wilson approved the warrant on the basis of the missing child report and our existing case file on Blackwood, he announced to the assembled officers. We move in 1 hour. In a quiet corner of the room, Mark and Sarah sat with Noah between them. The boy had refused to be separated from Ranger, but Officer Rivera had finally convinced him that the injured dog needed rest to heal. You've helped us more than you can imagine, Officer Rivera told Noah, kneeling to his level. But this next part is for the police to handle. Noah looked up with worried eyes. But what if you can't find Tommy? What if the bad men hide him? Officer Rivera's expression was gentle but determined. We have your maps, and we have Ranger's information. We'll find him. Despite these reassurances, Noah remained anxious. Ranger says there are secret places you might miss, and the bad men have guns. Mark put an arm around his son's shoulders. The police know what they're doing, buddy. They have special training for situations like this. But Noah wasn't convinced. He closed his eyes, his face scrunched in concentration, as though he was trying to see something only visible in his mind. It's all different now, he said suddenly, his voice rising with alarm. They're moving things. They know you're coming. Captain Reyes, who had been passing by, stopped abruptly. What did he say? Sarah explained their son's concern, though she was careful to keep her tone measured. Noah thinks Blackwood might be moving things around, possibly relocating the child. Captain Reyes studied Noah for a long moment, then made a decision. We're accelerating the timeline. Team leaders, briefing in 5 minutes. We move in 30. As officers began moving with increased urgency, Officer Rivera turned to Mark and Sarah. We've arranged for you to wait at a hotel under protection until this is over. Once we have Blackwood in custody, the immediate threat to your family should be neutralized. Sarah gripped Mark's hand. And after that? Will we be safe to go home? What about Noah's connection to all this? Officer Rivera's expression softened. One step at a time. Let's focus on today's operation first. They were preparing to leave when Noah suddenly went rigid, his eyes wide. Ranger, he gasped. Something's wrong with Ranger. Before anyone could stop him, he bolted from his chair and ran toward the door. Mark caught him just before he reached it. Noah, stop! We can't go back to the vet facility right now. But Noah was frantic, tears streaming down his face. Ranger's scared. He says someone's there. Bad people. Officer Rivera immediately pulled out his radio, stepping away to speak in rapid, urgent tones. When he returned, his expression was grim. The veterinary facility just reported an attempted breach of their security system. Their guards intercepted a man attempting to access the recovery wing where Ranger is being kept. Sarah pulled Noah close, her face pale. How did they find him? We're still investigating, but it appears someone may have followed one of the staff members. Officer Rivera's hand rested on his holster. We're moving Ranger to a more secure location immediately, and we need to get your family to safety as well. While Officer Rivera coordinated with other officers, Mark knelt in front of his son. Noah, I need you to be very brave right now. Can you still feel Ranger? Is he okay? Noah wiped his tears, his breathing slowly steadying as he concentrated. He's still scared, but he's not hurt. The people with him are good people. Mark nodded, relieved. That's good. The police are going to take him somewhere safe, just like they're taking us somewhere safe. As they prepared to leave, Captain Reyes approached them once more. His tactical gear made him an imposing figure, but he spoke gently to Noah. "The information you gave us is invaluable, young man. Thanks to you and Ranger, we have our best chance yet to stop a very dangerous criminal and rescue an innocent child." Noah looked up at the captain, his expression serious beyond his years. "Ranger says be careful of the dogs in the big kennels. They're trained to attack police." Captain Reyes didn't dismiss the warning. Instead, he nodded solemnly. "We'll bring extra animal control officers and tranquilizer guns. No harm will come to those dogs if we can help it." As the family was escorted to a waiting police car, Noah turned for one last look at the tactical team preparing for their mission. "Be safe," he whispered, though no one but his parents heard him. The hotel room was comfortable but felt like a prison. 2 officers stood guard outside their door, and they were instructed not to leave for any reason. Noah sat by the window, staring out at the city below, his mind clearly elsewhere. "Can you still feel Ranger?" Sarah asked gently, sitting beside him. Noah nodded. "He's in a car, moving. He hurts, but he's trying to be brave." He turned to look at his mother, his eyes filled with a wisdom that seemed impossible for a 5-year-old. "He's been brave his whole life, even when the bad men hurt him. That's why he's a police dog." Sarah brushed his hair back from his forehead. "And what about Tommy? Can you feel him too?" Noah shook his head. "Not like Ranger, but Ranger saw him, so I saw him too." His lower lip trembled. "He's really scared, Mom. He keeps asking for his dad and his dog." Mark joined them at the window, placing a reassuring hand on Noah's shoulder. "The police will find him, buddy, thanks to you and Ranger." Hours passed with agonizing slowness. They tried to distract Noah with television and games, but his attention kept drifting back to the window, as though he could somehow see what was happening across the city. "They've started," he announced suddenly, his body going still. "Ranger can feel it, even though he's not there." Mark and Sarah exchanged worried glances, uncertain whether to encourage what seemed like an increasingly deep psychic connection or to try to distract their son from it. Their silence was broken by a knock at the door. Mark checked through the peephole to see Officer Garcia standing in the hallway. He opened the door quickly. "Any news?" he asked. Officer Garcia's expression was carefully neutral. "The operation is underway. That's all I can share for now." But Noah was already on his feet, his eyes wide. "They found Tommy. He was in a different room, not the one in my drawing." Officer Garcia looked startled. "How did you—" "Ranger told me," Noah said simply. "The bad people moved him, but the police still found him because one of the other dogs showed them where to look." Officer Garcia knelt to Noah's level. "Noah, have you been in contact with anyone at the scene? Has anyone called you or sent messages about the raid?" Noah shook his head. "Only Ranger. He can see through the other dog's eyes sometimes. Not clear like pictures, more like feelings and smells and sounds." The officer looked like she wanted to say more, but her radio crackled to life. She stepped into the hallway to respond, closing the door behind her. "Do you really think Noah is somehow psychically connected to Ranger?" Sarah whispered to Mark, while their son returned to the window. Mark ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to think anymore, but he keeps knowing things he couldn't possibly know." Sarah watched her son, who was now whispering softly to himself, or perhaps to Ranger, across the miles that separated them. "Whatever it is, it's real to him, and it seems to be helping the police." Officer Garcia returned, her expression now openly excited. "We just got confirmation. Thomas Whitaker has been found alive. He was hidden in a concealed room, exactly as Noah described, just in a different location than originally drawn." Noah turned from the window. "Because they moved him. I told you they were moving things around." Officer Garcia nodded, her skepticism clearly wavering in the face of such uncanny accuracy. "You did tell us, and you were right." Noah's next question cut straight to the heart of the matter. Did they find the bad man, the one who hurt Ranger and took Tommy? Officer Garcia's expression clouded. Vincent Blackwood wasn't at the property when the raid began. It appears he was tipped off and fled shortly before our arrival. We have an APB out for him, but so far... Noah's face fell. He'll come after Ranger again, and now he'll come after me too, because I helped. The stark reality of a 5-year-old understanding that he might be targeted by a dangerous criminal left everyone in the room momentarily speechless. "We won't let that happen," Mark finally said, his voice firm with conviction. "We'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe." Officer Garcia nodded in agreement. Your family will remain under police protection until Blackwood is apprehended, and we're still gathering evidence from the compound. The operation was successful even without capturing Blackwood. We rescued Tommy, found significant evidence of drug trafficking, and saved over 30 fighting dogs. But Noah seemed distracted again, his focus turning inward. Ranger says the bad man has a special place he goes when he's in trouble, a house by water where no one knows his name. Officer Garcia's attention sharpened. Did Ranger show you what this place looks like? Noah nodded and asked for paper and crayons. Within minutes, he was drawing again, this time sketching a lakeside cabin surrounded by tall pine trees. He added details that seemed impossible for him to know. A boat dock with a specific blue and white boat, a stone chimney with an unusual pattern, and a winding driveway with a gate bearing the image of a leaping stag. Ranger was there once, Noah explained as he colored. The bad man took him there after he stole him from the police. That's where he first tried to make Ranger forget his training. Officer Garcia carefully took the drawing. Noah, this could be the break we need. If we can locate this property... Lake Evergreen, Noah said with certainty. That's what the sign said when they drove there. Ranger remembers because it was the last time he saw the sky for a long time. Officer Garcia was already on her radio, relaying this new information to the search team. The pieces were falling into place with a speed that seemed almost miraculous, all because of a little boy who could somehow see through the eyes of a wounded German shepherd. As evening approached, they received word that the tactical operation at Blackwood's compound had concluded. The evidence seized was substantial, enough to shut down a major drug distribution network and bring charges against multiple members of Blackwood's organization, but the man himself remained at large. We've identified a property matching Noah's description at Lake Evergreen, Officer Garcia informed them. It's registered to a shell company, but satellite imagery confirms the distinctive features he drew. A team is being assembled to investigate. Noah, who had been dozing on the couch after the emotional day, sat up suddenly. He's there, he said with absolute conviction. I can feel Ranger getting excited. The bad man is at the lake house right now. Officer Garcia studied Noah's face, then made a decision. She stepped out into the hallway again with her radio. When she returned, her expression was resolute. The tactical team is diverting to Lake Evergreen, but we need to move your family again, somewhere Blackwood would never think to look. Where? Sarah asked, already gathering their few belongings. The veterinary facility where Ranger is being kept. We've upgraded security, and it's the last place Blackwood would expect you to be, hiding right under his nose. Mark looked skeptical. Is that safe? They already tried to breach it once. That's why it's perfect now. We've quadrupled security, and everyone entering is being thoroughly vetted. Plus, we're spreading disinformation that your family has been moved out of state. Noah's expression brightened for the first time that day. We're going to see Ranger? Officer Garcia nodded. Yes. We think having you together might actually be advantageous at this point. Your connection with him has proven invaluable, and if you can help us track Blackwood's movements... The decision made, they were quickly escorted from the hotel through a service entrance and into an unmarked vehicle with tinted windows. The drive to the veterinary facility took them through back roads and a series of seemingly random turns designed to detect and lose any potential tail. When they arrived, they were rushed inside through a loading dock rather than the main entrance. The facility had been transformed into a veritable fortress, with armed officers positioned at every access point and security systems that would rival a government building. And in the center of it all was Ranger. The German shepherd was awake when they entered his room, his ears perking up at the sight of Noah. Despite his injuries and the various medical equipment still attached to him, his tail thumped against the bed in clear recognition and joy. Noah ran to his side, tears streaming down his face as he gently embraced the dog. I told you we'd be together again, he whispered into Ranger's fur. For the first time since the ordeal began, something in the atmosphere seemed to shift. A tension that had been building released ever so slightly as boy and dog reunited. His vital signs are actually improving, the veterinary technician noted, watching the monitors with surprise. Heart rate stabilizing, blood pressure normalizing. Sarah smiled through her own tears. They heal each other. The peaceful moment was interrupted by Officer Rivera's arrival. He looked exhausted but determined as he entered the room. The Lake Evergreen team is in position, he reported. They have confirmed visual on Blackwood at the property. They're waiting for final authorization to move in. Noah, still at Ranger's side, looked up. He has a secret way out. underground, like at the safe house. Officer Rivera didn't question how Noah would know this. "Can you show us?" Noah nodded and was quickly supplied with drawing materials. His small hand moved confidently across the paper, sketching the lakeside property again, but this time adding a hidden tunnel that led from the house's cellar to a boathouse several hundred feet away. "Ranger saw them building it," he explained. "The bad man doesn't know Ranger was watching." The drawing was immediately photographed and transmitted to the tactical team. Noah remained at Ranger's side, his hand resting on the dog's head as they seemed to communicate in their mysterious, silent way. Minutes crawled by as they waited for news. The adults tried to maintain calm conversations, but the tension in the room was palpable. Only Noah seemed truly peaceful, completely focused on Ranger. "They're going in," Officer Rivera announced suddenly, listening to his radio. "All access points covered, including the tunnel exit." Noah nodded, as though he already knew. "Ranger says it's almost over." The next 30 minutes were among the longest of Mark and Sarah's lives. Updates came in fragments: the house secured, evidence found, a pursuit initiated when Blackwood was spotted fleeing toward the boathouse. Then, finally, the words they had been waiting for: suspect in custody, no casualties. A collective sigh of relief filled the room. Ranger's tail thumped more vigorously against the bed, and Noah smiled up at his parents. "The bad man can't hurt anyone anymore," he said simply. As the immediate danger passed, attention turned to what would happen next. Tommy Whitaker had been reunited with his father and was receiving medical attention. Though his physical injuries were fortunately minimal, the rescued fighting dogs were being evaluated by animal behavior specialists, with hopes that many could be rehabilitated and eventually rehomed. And then there was Ranger, a hero twice over, first as a police canine and now as the key to bringing down a dangerous criminal organization. "What happens to him now?" Noah asked Officer Rivera, his arm still draped protectively across Ranger's back. Officer Rivera sat beside them. "Well, that's something we need to discuss. Normally, when a police dog is injured in the line of duty, they're given the best medical care possible. If they can return to work, they do. If not, they're usually adopted by their handler or another police family." "But Ranger's handler died," Noah said quietly. "That's why he was working with different police officers." Officer Rivera nodded, surprised once again by Noah's knowledge of details he shouldn't have known. "That's right. His handler, Officer Mitchell, was killed in an unrelated incident about a year ago. Ranger had been reassigned to the K-9 unit generally and worked with several officers." "So, where will he go?" Sarah asked, seeing the obvious distress building in her son's expression. Officer Rivera looked at the small family, then at the injured dog whose extraordinary bond with a 5-year-old boy had helped solve a case that had stumped experienced police officers for months. "I think," he said carefully, "that some rules might need to be bent in this case. Ranger has formed a connection with Noah that none of us fully understand, but that clearly benefits them both." Noah's eyes widened with hope. "He can come live with us?" Officer Rivera held up a cautioning hand. "There would be conditions, training requirements for both of you, regular check-ins with the K-9 unit, and his recovery will be long and difficult. He'll need multiple surgeries, physical therapy, special care." Mark and Sarah exchanged glances, a wordless communication passing between them. The events of the past few days had changed their lives irrevocably. There was no going back to normal, only forward to a new normal that now, somehow, included a former police dog with an inexplicable connection to their son. "We would do whatever it takes," Mark said finally, "if it's what's best for Ranger and for Noah." Noah's face lit up with joy as he turned back to Ranger. "Did you hear that? You're coming home with us!" Ranger's tail thumped against the bed, his eyes never leaving Noah's face. For a moment, it was easy to believe that he understood every word. Officer Rivera smiled, the weariness of the past days temporarily lifting from his features. "It's not official yet. There will be paperwork, approvals needed, but I'll make it my personal mission to see it happen." As night fell on the most extraordinary week of their lives, the Taylor family remained together in Ranger's room. The immediate danger had passed, but the journey ahead would not be easy. Ranger's recovery would be long and uncertain. There would be testimonies to give, evidence to provide, and a new life to build that accommodated the special needs of both a recovering police dog and a little boy with an unexplainable gift. But watching Noah fall asleep beside Ranger, his small hand resting protectively on the dog's fur, Mark and Sarah felt something they hadn't expected to feel again so soon: hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, because some connections transcend understanding, reaching across the boundaries between species to touch something deeper and more profound than words could express. Have you ever witnessed a child's special connection with animals? Do you believe some people are born with unique abilities to communicate with our four-legged friends? What would you do if you discovered your child had an extraordinary gift like Noah's? 3 months passed. The leaves that had been vibrant autumn colors during their fateful hike had long since fallen, and winter had wrapped the world in a quiet blanket of snow. Inside the Taylor home, life had found a new rhythm, one that revolved around recovery, healing, and the extraordinary bond between a boy and his dog. Ranger lay on a specially designed orthopedic bed in the living room, his hind legs still supported by lightweight braces. The multiple surgeries had been successful, but the road to recovery was long and challenging. Beside him, Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, reading aloud from a children's book about police dogs. "He's getting restless," Noah announced, setting the book aside. "He wants to try walking again." Sarah looked up from her laptop, where she had been working on freelance graphic design projects. In the months since the Blackwood case, she had transitioned to working from home to help care for Ranger and to be available for the numerous follow-up appointments with both veterinarians and police officials. "Dr. Chen said we need to stick to the schedule," she reminded gently. 20 minutes of supervised walking 3 times a day. We already did his morning session." Noah nodded, but his expression remained determined. "He feels stronger today. The pain is less." Mark entered from the kitchen, drying his hands on a dish towel. "How about a compromise? Instead of more walking, we could do some of the passive range of motion exercises Dr. Chen showed us. That won't put weight on his legs, but will help keep his muscles from getting stiff." Noah considered this, then nodded. "Ranger says that's a good idea." The casual way Noah referenced his communication with Ranger no longer shocked his parents. After everything they had witnessed, they had come to accept, if not fully understand, the profound connection between their son and the German Shepherd. Mark knelt beside them, carefully removing the lightweight braces that supported Ranger's healing legs. "Ready, boy?" he asked, gently taking one hind leg and beginning the slow, prescribed movements that would help maintain flexibility without straining the healing bone. Ranger remained calm, his eyes fixed on Noah as though drawing strength from the boy's presence. Occasionally he would whimper when a movement caused discomfort, and Noah would immediately murmur reassurances that seemed to soothe him. "Dr. Chen said she's never seen a dog recover this quickly from such extensive injuries," Sarah remarked, watching the careful therapy session. "She called it remarkable." Mark nodded. "Officer Rivera said the same thing when he visited last week. He thinks it's because of Noah." They had grown accustomed to weekly visits from Officer Rivera, who had become the official liaison between the Taylor family and the police department. The arrangement for Ranger to live with them had been finalized through a special adaptation of the department's canine retirement program, with modifications to account for the unusual circumstances. As Mark completed the exercises and carefully replaced the supportive braces, the doorbell rang. Sarah went to answer it, checking through the peephole before opening the door. Though Blackwood had been denied bail and remained in custody awaiting trial, old cautions died hard. "Ms. Whitaker, Tommy," she greeted warmly, stepping back to allow them entry. "Come in out of the cold." Lisa Whitaker entered with her 7-year-old son Tommy, both bundled against the winter weather. Tommy immediately looked toward the living room, where Noah and Ranger were waiting. "Can I go say hi to Ranger?" he asked his mother, already removing his snow boots. Lisa nodded, helping him out of his coat. "Of course, that's why we're here." Since being rescued from Blackwood's compound, Tommy had been receiving therapy to process his traumatic experience. His therapist had suggested that spending time with both Noah and Ranger might help him heal, given their shared connection to the events. What had started as therapeutic visits had evolved into a genuine friendship between the two boys, united by their love for the brave German Shepherd who had tried to save them both. Tommy approached Ranger carefully, always respectful of the dog's injuries. "Hi, Ranger," he said softly, kneeling beside Noah. "Hi, Noah." Noah grinned at his friend. "Ranger says hi back. He's happy you came." Tommy's face lit up. "Really? How do you know?" Noah shrugged, unable to explain his gift in words that made sense even to himself. "I just know, like how I know you brought treats for him in your pocket." Tommy laughed. reaching into his pocket to pull out a small dog biscuit. Mom said it was okay. It's the kind Dr. Chen approved. While the boys focused on Ranger, the adults moved to the kitchen where Sarah prepared coffee and hot chocolate. "How's Tommy doing?" Mark asked quietly. Lisa's expression was a mixture of pride and lingering concern. "Better every day. The nightmares are less frequent now. His therapist says he's making remarkable progress." She glanced toward the living room, where the boys were now taking turns telling Ranger about their day. These visits help more than anything else. Somehow, being around Noah and Ranger makes him feel safe again. Sarah nodded in understanding. Noah's the same way. When the prosecution team was preparing him for his testimony, he was anxious until we suggested bringing a photo of Ranger to the meetings. Just having that connection seemed to give him strength. The Blackwood case had moved through the legal system with unusual speed, given the high-profile nature of the crimes and the substantial evidence gathered. Noah had provided testimony through carefully arranged remote depositions that protected him from direct confrontation with Blackwood. His uncanny knowledge of details about the criminal operation, attributed to his observations during Ranger's rescue rather than any mention of psychic connection, had proven invaluable to the prosecution. "The prosecutor called yesterday," Mark mentioned, keeping his voice low. "Blackwood's attorney has approached them about a plea deal. They think he's finally realized how strong the case against him is." Lisa's relief was palpable. "That would mean no trial? Tommy wouldn't have to testify?" "That's what they're saying. Nothing's finalized yet, but it's looking promising." The conversation was interrupted by excited calls from the living room. "Mom, Dad, come quick!" Noah's voice was urgent but joyful. They hurried back to find Ranger standing on all four legs, the braces on his hind legs allowing him enough support to maintain his balance. It wasn't the first time he had stood since his surgeries, but there was something different about his posture now, a new steadiness, a return of the dignified bearing that had once made him an impressive police canine. "He wants to try walking to the kitchen by himself," Noah announced, his face glowing with pride. "He says he's ready." Dr. Chen had outlined a careful rehabilitation plan, with each milestone to be reached at a prescribed pace. Self-motivated walking across the room wasn't scheduled to begin for another 2 weeks. "Are you sure, buddy?" Mark asked, looking between his son and the dog. "We don't want to rush his recovery." Noah nodded with absolute certainty. He's sure. The metal things in his legs don't hurt as much today, and he wants to show Tommy how brave he is. Mark and Sarah exchanged glances, then looked to Lisa, who shrugged slightly, as if to say, "I've learned not to question this connection." "All right," Sarah said finally, "but just to the kitchen and back, and we'll be right beside him in case he needs support." They created a clear path, moving furniture aside and laying down the yoga mats that provided better traction for Ranger's paws. Noah positioned himself at the kitchen doorway, while Tommy stayed by Ranger's side, ready to offer encouragement. "Come on, Ranger," Noah called softly. "You can do it." With a focus that seemed almost human, Ranger took his first careful step. His movements were stiff and hesitant, but each paw placement was deliberate. Tommy walked beside him, not touching but close enough to provide moral support. "He's doing it," Tommy whispered in awe, as Ranger continued his slow but determined progress across the room. The adults watched in amazed silence. Dr. Chen had prepared them for a long, difficult rehabilitation, with the possibility that Ranger might never walk normally again. Yet, here he was, moving with increasing confidence toward Noah, guided by something beyond physical therapy and medical intervention. When Ranger finally reached Noah, the boy dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms gently around the dog's neck. "I knew you could do it," he whispered into Ranger's fur. "You're the bravest dog in the world." Ranger's tail wagged slowly, his eyes never leaving Noah's face. In that moment, the connection between them was almost visible, a tangible bond that transcended the normal relationship between child and pet. Lisa wiped away a tear. "It's remarkable," she murmured to Sarah. "When Tommy was in that awful place, he said he used to dream about a big dog coming to save him. He didn't know about Ranger then, but somehow—" Sarah nodded, understanding without need for further explanation. "There are some things we might never fully understand." The afternoon continued with a celebratory atmosphere. Ranger, tired but triumphant after his walking achievement, settled back on his bed while the boys played board games nearby. The adults finalized plans for an upcoming joint therapy session, where both boys would work with a child psychologist specializing in trauma recovery, with Ranger present as a support animal. As dusk approached and the Whitakers prepared to leave, Officer Rivera arrived for his weekly check-in. He brought news that added to the day's positive developments. "It's official," he announced after greeting everyone. "Blackwood has accepted a plea deal, 25 years without possibility of parole, in exchange for information about his drug suppliers and distribution network." The relief in the room was palpable. No trial meant no more depositions, no cross-examinations, no possibility of traumatizing the children further by making them relive their experiences. "There's more," Officer Rivera continued, his expression softening as he looked at Ranger. "The department has made a decision about Ranger's official status." Noah immediately moved closer to the German Shepherd, a protective hand resting on his back. Officer Rivera smiled at the boy's reaction. "It's good news. In recognition of his extraordinary service, both before and after his injuries, Ranger is being awarded the department's Medal of Valor. It's the highest honor we can give to a canine officer." Tommy's eyes widened. "Like a medal for being a hero?" "Exactly like that," Officer Rivera confirmed. "There will be a small ceremony once Ranger is mobile enough to attend. Very private, with just department officials and your families." Noah beamed with pride, but didn't appear surprised. "Ranger already knows," he said simply. "He saw it in your mind when you came in." Officer Rivera had long since stopped questioning Noah's unusual insights. "Well, then I suppose I should also tell you about the second decision. The department, in conjunction with the Veterinary College, has approved a special training program for both Noah and Ranger." Sarah looked up. "What kind of training program?" "Once Ranger is fully recovered, he'll be officially reclassified as a therapy dog, with special authorization to work with children who have experienced trauma. Noah, as his handler, will receive age-appropriate training in how to facilitate these interactions." Mark's brow furrowed. "He's only 5. Isn't that a lot of responsibility?" Officer Rivera nodded in understanding. "The program will grow with him. For now, it will be very basic, mostly teaching him how to help Ranger interact safely with other children under supervision. As he gets older, the training will expand if he's interested in continuing." Noah's face lit up with excitement. "Ranger says yes, he wants to help other kids like Tommy, and I want to help too." Lisa Whitaker, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "Tommy's therapist has actually suggested something similar. Animal-assisted therapy has been incredibly beneficial for him. Having someone like Noah who can help facilitate that connection would be amazing for other children in similar situations." As the conversation continued, working through logistics and details, Ranger watched the humans with quiet attentiveness. His physical recovery was still ongoing, but the alert intelligence in his eyes had fully returned. Whatever trauma he had experienced at Blackwood's hands had not broken his spirit or his capacity to bond with humans, especially one particular human who somehow understood him in ways no one else could. After the Whitakers and Officer Rivera departed, the Taylor family settled in for a quiet evening. Noah, exhausted from the day's excitement, fell asleep on the floor beside Ranger's bed, his small hand resting on the dog's paw. "Should we move him?" Mark whispered to Sarah as they watched their sleeping son. Sarah shook her head. "Let them be. They comfort each other." Mark put his arm around his wife's shoulders. "Did you ever imagine, when we went for that hike 3 months ago, that our lives would change so completely?" Sarah leaned into his embrace. "Not in a million years. But I wouldn't change it, even with all the fear and uncertainty. The way Noah has blossomed through this connection with Ranger, it's like he's found his purpose, even at 5 years old. Dr. Miller called it an empathic gift when I described it to her yesterday," Mark said, referring to the child psychologist who had been helping them understand and support Noah's unusual abilities. "She thinks Noah has an innate capacity to sense emotions and needs in animals that most people can't perceive." "And Ranger has the same gift with Noah," Sarah observed, watching as the sleeping dog's paw twitched slightly, adjusting to maintain contact with the boy's hand. "They heal each other." The months that followed brought steady progress in Ranger's physical recovery. By spring, he was walking without braces for short periods, though a slight limp remained, a permanent reminder of his ordeal that did nothing to diminish his dignity or effectiveness. Noah started kindergarten in the fall, with Ranger accompanying him on special approved days as part of the therapy dog training program. The other children were enchanted by the German Shepherd, who responded to Noah's quiet commands with impressive precision, and teachers noted how Noah's previously shy demeanor had transformed into confident leadership when working with his canine partner. The Taylor family adjusted to their new normal, a life that now included regular veterinary appointments, training sessions with the police canine unit, and visits from children referred by Tommy's therapist who might benefit from spending time with the remarkable pair. Noah's unusual connection with Ranger remained a mystery to the scientific and medical professionals who observed them, but its positive effects were undeniable. Children who had experienced trauma similar to Tommy's often responded to Ranger when they had shut out all human attempts at connection. And somehow, Noah always seemed to know exactly what Ranger was trying to communicate to these wounded young souls. On the one-year anniversary of the day they found Ranger in Maple Ridge Park, the family returned to the trail for a ceremonial hike. Ranger, now able to walk moderate distances without assistance, led the way with Noah at his side. When they reached the fallen log where the injured dog had once hidden, Noah placed a small handmade marker. "What does it say?" Sarah asked, unable to read the childish writing from where she stood. Noah smiled up at his parents. "It says, 'This is where Ranger found his voice, and I found mine.'" As they continued their hike, with Ranger moving more slowly, but with unmistakable pride, Mark reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them to this point. A chance discovery in the woods, a mysterious connection between a boy and a dog, a dangerous criminal brought to justice, and countless lives changed forever, all because Noah had somehow heard what no one else could hear. "He's happy," Noah said suddenly, looking up at his father with a smile. "Ranger says this is exactly where we're all supposed to be." Mark ruffled his son's hair. "I think Ranger is exactly right." They watched as the German Shepherd paused on the trail ahead, looking back at them with alert, intelligent eyes that seemed to hold mysteries deeper than anyone might imagine. With his head held high and his once broken legs now supporting him firmly on the forest path, Ranger waited patiently for his family to catch up. And Noah, the boy who had given voice to a dog's silent courage, ran forward to meet him. 5 years later, the Taylor family's story became the foundation for a nationally recognized program pairing specially trained therapy dogs with children who had experienced trauma. Ranger, though retired from active work due to his age, remained the program's inspiration and mascot, attending ceremonies with a gray muzzle but the same dignified bearing that had once made him an exceptional police canine. And Noah, now a confident 10-year-old with an uncanny gift for understanding animals in need, continued to be Ranger's voice, bridging the gap between human and canine worlds in ways that transformed countless lives. Sometimes the most extraordinary connections emerge from the most unlikely circumstances, and sometimes a child's ability to listen with his heart rather than his ears reveals truths that adults might never discover on their own. This story touched the hearts of millions around the world. If it touched yours too, please like, share, and subscribe to hear more incredible tales of hope, healing, and the remarkable bond between humans and animals. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below.